Now, what are the long-term goals of what are the ideas behind Autosar, why we think it makes sense to use it? Well, let's go through them. Serviceability. So, since we work with this standard, we know exactly how it has to look, and we know that there are suppliers out there on the market, like for example Vector, that will provide you updates and upgrades over the entire life cycle of a vehicle. So if you, for example, come to us here at Vector, we will know exactly what you purchased from us and will be able to provide you with updates or with fault report, error reports, issue reports, should anything go wrong. Abstraction, next goal that we have, I already mentioned this a little bit, that's the idea, how do we abstract our hardware from our software so that we can use multiple microcontrollers. There are well over 100 different microcontrollers out there now on the market that are commonly used in automotive area. You cannot be an expert for all of them, so there is some abstraction necessary, and Autosar provides this for you. And for everybody involved, we try to shift with Autosar, we try to shift the development activities from implementation to configuration, meaning you're no longer writing most of the code that you have by hand, but instead you are configuring the Autosar modules that we saw on the previous slide in a configuration tool. And then, based on this configuration, you generate code that you can then compile, and that will behave according to the expectations of that you laid down in the configuration itself. Since we can now standardize some functionalities, we hope that we also can have an improved software quality. We don't need every tier 1 to develop their own network management algorithm. To go back to this example, it's perfectly sufficient if you have one such an NM or one such an NM for every standard software supplier that is tested widely in many different projects and thus already has an increased software quality due to the much, much better testing. And so since the tier 1s and the OEMs no longer need to be concerned about developing those standardized features, they can compete on the relevant features, the things that are can be directly experienced by the customer who buys a car. So they can focus on that and can rely on the standard software suppliers that the standard functionalities will be there. And since most OEMs are now following this standard, of course, this makes reusability of functions across different OEMs, across vehicle networks, much easier. Because you already have modules, you can already be sure that the modules between different OEMs will most likely behave very similar. So, coming back to the reusability aspect, one more thing, when it comes to the design of software, OEMs now can also work in a way more abstract way by, for example, defining function libraries, where instead of developing functions for every car line individually, they can now say, okay, we create a general library, and then we distribute those functions to different vehicles. So here we might, for example, have a vehicle, two vehicles from the same manufacturer. One vehicle maybe is a smaller one, a low-cost vehicle with less ECUs. So these small boxes here are ECUs, and maybe less functionalities. So and here we have a big car, upper line, more ECUs, maybe even more functionalities, more complex functionalities. But nevertheless, the logic for some of those functionalities might still be the same. So for example, an interior light will work in terms of its logic very similar in a low-end car compared to a high-end car. Of course, there are some fancy things you might need to distribute across multiple ECUs, but the general functionality will look very similar.